guys, it's Tara. Today we're going to talk about 10 books and series that I have DNF'd. If you have no idea what I just said, DNF stands for Did Not Finish. It is a book or a series that you have consciously decided to not finish. Obligatory disclaimer time if I talk about one of your favorite books or series here. I'm sorry, different strokes for different folks. One man's trash is another man's treasure, and any other idioms you want to throw in there. And here we go. I'm gonna start off with a book in the series I'm not entirely sure I want to give up on yet, and that is Dragonfly in Amber by Diana Gabaldon, which is book 2 of the Outlander series. Obviously, can't tell you much about this book because spoilers, but the first book, Outlander, follows Claire, who is a 1940s nurse, and she accidentally travels back in time to 18th century Scotland, and she has to hide her true identity and adapt to life in this strange new world while trying to figure out a way to get home to her own time and to the husband that she left behind. But when she falls in love with a Scotsman, she starts to wonder where she truly belongs. Now, I loved Outlander, the first book of the series, absolutely loved it. I read it concurrently with watching the TV show, which was a really great experience. I'd never done that before. There is sort of a love triangle in this series, and I know love triangles are kind of, you know, shunned in general in BookTube, but it was unlike any other love triangle I've ever read or seen at all, and the romance itself was very unique and very wonderful, especially in the show, because the show really amps up the steam factor of this romance. Then the thing at the end, which I obviously cannot say anything about, but it was so shocking and so intense and riveting and heart-wrenching, and I've never seen anything like that done in a book or a TV show before, and it just absolutely blew my mind. I was thrilled to find that Outlander was such a huge series. I think there's like 9 or 10 or 11 books in the series at this point, and I was fully planning to dedicate the next several months to reading that series, but when I picked up Dragonfly and Amber, I just could not get into it. It was basically just a cycle of Claire gets angry or jealous over something stupid, she and Jamie fight, and then they make up, lather, rinse, repeat for a really long time. I was so bored, but I managed to hang on for 317 pages. I got this far before I finally threw in the towel. But I did not unhaul this book when I did my last unhaul because I loved Outlander so much, and I'm just still hesitant to officially DNF this book and the series. If you have gotten further into this book or the series, please let me know if it's worth continuing, if I should maybe just skip over a big chunk of this book and get to the good stuff, or if it's just gonna be as boring as the first 300 pages were. Next up is Blood and Gold by Anne Rice, which is book 8 in the Vampire Chronicles series and follows the origin story of Marius, who is a 2,000-year-old vampire who was a really instrumental figure in the earlier books of the series. I loved the first 3 books of the Vampire Chronicles, but after that, I kind of just stopped caring, but I still kept reading the series in hopes that it would eventually get better again. But it didn't. I actually started Blood and Gold on 2 different occasions, and both times just got a little bit through and had to put it down because I just could not get into the story, which is really strange because I loved Marius in the earlier books and I was so looking forward to getting his origin story, but I just didn't like it. So I eventually decided to skip this book, to keep going with the series, and I did finish the series, but I never came back to Blood and Gold. I just finished reading Prince Lestat, which is book 11 in the series. It picks up after like 10 years of the series being on hiatus, and reading through this, I wish that I had finished Blood and Gold because there were a lot of references to the events that happened in Blood and Gold and the characters that we meet in Blood and Gold that I just didn't get. So I do regret not finishing this book because I think I missed out on some things in this book because of it. Will I ever go back to Blood and Gold? I really don't know. I think if I go back and read the entire Vampire Chronicles series again one day, I'll definitely give it a try, but I'm not holding my breath on that happening anytime soon. Next up is Symbiont, which is the second book in the Parasitology series by Mira. This is a sci-fi series set in the near future in which almost every human being on the planet is implanted with a genetically engineered tapeworm that protects them from illness and disease, basically making the world into a thriving utopia until the tapeworms start gaining consciousness and wanting a life of their own. Now, I am fascinated by parasites. I'm weird, I know, and I was really excited when I heard about the series because of that, but it just did not meet my expectations. I did somewhat enjoy the first book of the series, Parasite, but it was pretty predictable, and I guessed the big twist ending very early on, so when I finally got to that twist ending, I was extremely underwhelmed. Symbiont was just plain boring. I did not care about the plot at all, and I had to force myself to pick it up every single time. Eventually just gave up halfway through. I am so sad because I wanted to love this series, but I just didn't. And now for some series where I did finish the first book and immediately decided not to go any further. And first up with that is The Magicians by Lev Grossman. I don't know what the series is called. Is it just The Magician series? I don't know. In any case, The Magicians is a coming-of-age story about a guy who goes off to college and has pretty much the standard college experience, except that this is a college of magic. I was pretty excited when I heard this series being called Harry Potter for Adults, but that excitement did not last. It's basically a mashup of Harry Potter and Chronicles of Narnia, but nowhere near as good as either of those. I can't even tell you why, because I literally forget everything about this book. Other than that, I didn't like it. Especially the ending. There was something about the ending that made me angry. But again, I have no idea what it is. I've heard that the TV show is better than the books, but I don't even care. I have no interest in finishing this series, and I won't be watching the show either. The Sookie Stackhouse series by Charlaine Harris. Again, I'm not really sure that that's what the series is actually called, but we're gonna go with it. This is an urban fantasy series that follows Sookie Stackhouse, who is a small-town cocktail waitress in a world where vampires are out and proud and semi-functioning members of society. I loved the first season of True Blood, which is HBO's adaptation of the series, so I wanted to check the books out, but I was highly disappointed. This is one of those cases, at least in my opinion, where the adaptation vastly improves on the book. The show is really exciting and entertaining and funny and sexy, but the book was just boring and trite and trashy. There was nothing in this book that interested me or entertained me at all. Definitely will not be continuing with this series, and I also gave up on the show about 4 seasons in or so because it just... And next up is the Dorothy Must Die series by Danielle Paige. This is a YA reimagining of The Wizard of Oz, in which a teenage girl named Amy finds herself in Oz, except it is nothing like the Oz that she knows from the movie and the books, because Dorothy has returned and has become a tyrannical ruler and is sapping Oz of all its magic. Amy is then recruited by the Revolutionary Order of the Wicked and given the mission to assassinate Dorothy and her companions. I started planning my own Oz reimagining back in 2014, and then I discovered that Dorothy Must Die had just come out earlier that year and it sounded quite a bit like my idea, so I wanted to read it to find out whether or not I was just going to be wasting time writing a story that was already written. Thankfully, beyond the basic premise, this book and my book have very little in common. Honestly, cannot think of a single thing that I liked about Dorothy Must Die. It's just not a good book. It is not well written. The story is silly and trashy, and the characters are all one-dimensional, and there is actually a goth munchkin named Indigo who has purple hair and tattoos and piercings. Really? I mean, really? And it did not just have plot holes. The whole plot was one big hole. As part of her mission, Amy infiltrates the Emerald Palace to get close to Dorothy and to gather intel so that the people she's working for can use that intel to formulate a plan to assassinate Dorothy. Which is fine. Great idea. But they never actually get the intel from Amy. They just show up out of the blue one day with a plan so loose it can barely be called a plan, so what was the point of it all? The whole infiltration thing took up easily a third of this book, and it was pointless. It did nothing to advance the plot. It could have been entirely cut or at least shortened drastically, and the story would have been fine without it. I could go on, but I feel like I'm getting a little bit ranty right now, so suffice it to say, I really didn't like this book at all. Will not be finishing the series. Never, never. And next up is the Leviathan series by Scott Westerfeld. This is a YA historical steampunk series set in an alternate universe, World War I, and it follows two characters who are on either sides of the war. Alec is the would-be heir of the Austro-Hungarian throne, but has gone on the run after his people betrayed him, and Darren is a girl disguised as a boy to be in the British Air Service. Naturally, their paths cross, and adventure ensues. I read this during a bit of a steampunk phase that I went through a few years ago, and I had pretty high hopes because this seems to be the quintessential steampunk series, but I was pretty underwhelmed. I enjoyed it enough to finish the first book, and I had actually bought a box set, so I had book 2 and 3, but I just didn't want to finish them. And moving on to the Time Quintet by Madeleine L'Engle. This series starts with a Wrinkle in Time, who is about a young girl named Meg, who goes on an adventure in time and space to rescue her father, who went missing, and to defeat a darkness that is taking over the entire universe. A Wrinkle in Time is such a beloved children's classic, so going into this book, I had such high hopes for it, and those hopes were crushed. I had some pretty strong thoughts and feelings about this book, which I cover in my middle grade March wrap-up. If you want to check that out, links up here and down below. But bottom line, I did not like this book at all and absolutely have no interest in finishing the series. The only reason I read this book was because I had formed some opinions on it based on things other people have said about it, and the validity of my opinions were questioned because I hadn't read it myself. So I did. From the reviews I'd heard, I expected this book to be a romanticized abusive relationship, and it is 100%. Kristen Gray ticks every single box on every single list of signs that you're in an abusive relationship, and yet it's supposed to be a love story. Okay, I gotta calm down, I'm already getting upset. What I was not expecting was for this book to be so horribly written. Every single page made me cringe. Every single one of the millions of times she used the word murmur, or Anna said, "Oh my," or she talked to her inner goddess, or she compared sex to the spin cycle of a washing machine. I'm so serious, she actually does that. This reads like it was written by a 12-year-old who had never read a book before and whose only concept of sex came from some really bad amateur porn that she found under her brother's bed. I am ashamed and embarrassed to be a reader and a writer and a human being in a world where something this bad, not only for the subject matter, but for the quality of writing itself, can somehow become a bestseller. Okay, breathe. Needless to say, I will not be continuing with this series. I had considered it at one point, just, you know, to fully get the whole story, to see if there were any redeeming qualities about the series at all, maybe to live tweet my reading, because I did that with the first book, and it was actually pretty fun. But no, I just can't torture myself. I can't do it. No. And lastly, what I'm sure will be a very unpopular opinion, the Creekwood series by Becky Albertalli. The series starts off with the absolutely beloved Simon versus the Homo Sapiens agenda, and you all know what this book is about. I'm not going to waste your time summarizing it again here. Don't get me wrong, I did enjoy this book, but not as much as I think everybody else does. And I really did not like the character of Leah. I thought she was a pretty terrible friend and just kind of a terrible person in general, so I have no interest in reading her spin-off book, Leah on the Offbeat, especially after hearing reviews that say that she is just the same not-so-great person in this book that she was in Simon. However, I am open to reading other books that might be in the series that follow Simon or his other friends. I just won't be reading about Leah. That's all I have for you guys today. Let me know down below if you agree with me on any of these books, or if you think I'm crazy. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a big thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, happy reading. Bye-bye.